Sub-Lieutenant David Baum climbed down the third ladder into darkness. 20 years old, a pistol on his hip, descending into a German U-boat that might explode at any moment, or flood, or contain Germans waiting to kill him. It was May 9th, 1941. The submarine U-11 floated on the surface of the North Atlantic, abandoned by its crew, taking on water slowly. Baum's commander had ordered him to board her. Get whatever you can. Documents, books, charts, wireless settings, anything. Baum holstered his pistol. He needed both hands for the ladder. If someone was waiting below, he was a sitting duck. The control room was empty. Water sloshed around his ankles. Emergency lighting flickered. The submarine creaked and groaned. Every sound suggested imminent disaster. Baum moved through the boat methodically, checked for Germans hiding, checked for scuttling charges, found neither. The crew had abandoned ship in a panic. They'd assumed U-11 ton was sinking. They'd left everything behind. In the radio room, Baum found something unusual, a machine that looked like a typewriter. Wooden case, rotors inside, odd electrical connections. He had no idea what it was. It seemed important, so he took it. On the table beside the machine sat books, code books, settings sheets, current cipher keys, all the documents needed to operate the machine. Baum took those too. William Pollock, a radio operator on loan from the Royal Navy, arrived minutes later. He recognized the machine immediately. Enigma, the German cipher device. Everyone at Bletchley Park had been trying to break into the naval codes for years. This was the key. They stripped the U-boat of everything portable, every document, every chart, every book and manual, made multiple trips to HMS Bulldog, carrying armloads of material, worked for hours while U-11-10 wallowed in the Atlantic swells. The Germans never realized what happened. They assumed U-11-10 had sunk, assumed all the secret materials had gone down with her, assumed their codes remained secure. They were catastrophically wrong. The Enigma machine and codebooks from U-11 would help Britain crack German naval communications, route convoys around U-boat wolf packs, sink submarines before they could attack, turn the tide of the Battle of the Atlantic. King George VI would later tell Baum's commander that the capture of U-11-10 cipher material was the most important single event in the whole war at sea. But German Naval Command never knew. They kept using Enigma, kept believing it was unbreakable, kept sending messages that British codebreakers were reading within hours. How did Germany lose its greatest secret without knowing it? How did a 20-year-old British officer capture a submarine and change the course of the war? And why did the Kriegsmarine continue using a compromised cipher system for 4 more years? The answer begins, not with the capture, but with the machine itself, and with German confidence that bordered on delusion. Enigma wasn't new in 1941. The machine had existed since the 1920s. Arthur Scherbius, a German engineer, invented Enigma at the end of World War I. His goal was commercial, a cipher machine for businesses to protect communications. Banks, corporations, governments, anyone who needed secure messages. The design was elegant, a keyboard input, a series of rotors that scrambled the letters, a lamp board that displayed the encrypted output. Type a letter, a different letter lights up. Type the message letter by letter, write down the illuminated letters, send the encrypted text. The recipient uses an identical machine with identical settings to decrypt. The genius was in the rotors. Each rotor wired the alphabet to itself in a scrambled pattern. Stack 3 rotors together, add them to an electrical circuit, and every keystroke passes through 3 layers of scrambling. After each letter, the rightmost rotor steps forward 1 position, changing the cipher completely. After 26 letters, the middle rotor steps. After 676 letters, the left rotor steps. This means the cipher changes constantly. The letter A might encrypt to Q on the first keystroke, to W on the second, to R on the third. An entire message uses hundreds of different cipher alphabets. Breaking it through traditional code-breaking methods was nearly impossible, but Scherbius added more complexity. A plug board, 10 cables connecting pairs of letters before they reach the rotors. If A is plugged to K, then typing A sends K into the rotors, and the output is scrambled again. This added another layer of encryption that changed daily. The German military adopted Enigma in the late 1920s. The Army first, then the Kriegsmarine. Each service modified the basic design for their needs, added features, changed procedures, made it more complex. By 1941, the German naval Enigma used 4 rotors instead of 3. That multiplied the possible combinations exponentially. It used different plugboard settings, different rotor wirings, a special procedure for encoding weather reports and short signals. The Kriegsmarine calculated the possible combinations, over 150 quintillion. That's 150 with 18 zeros. Checking every possibility would take longer than the age of the universe. Breaking Enigma was mathematically impossible. Admiral Karl Dönitz, commanding U-boats, believed completely in Enigma's security. He micromanaged submarine operations from his headquarters at Carnival on the French Atlantic coast, sent detailed orders to U-boats at sea, coordinated wolfpack attacks, moved submarines to intercept convoys, all communications encrypted with Enigma. The system required heavy radio traffic. U-boats transmitted position reports, sighting reports, attack reports, weather observations. Dönitz transmitted movement orders, target assignments, tactical instructions, recall commands, hundreds of messages daily. The volume didn't worry Dönitz. Enigma was unbreakable. The British might intercept every message. Wouldn't matter. They couldn't decrypt them, not with 150 quintillion possible settings. But the Kriegsmarine's confidence rested on a fundamental misunderstanding. Enigma was mathematically strong, but mathematics wasn't the problem. The problem was human. Enigma required daily key settings, rotor order, ring settings, plugboard connections, initial rotor positions. Every operator needed the same settings to communicate. That meant distributing key sheets in advance, monthly books listing daily settings. The keys were classified top secret, kept in weighted bags that could be thrown overboard if capture was imminent. But submarines carried weeks or months of future keys. If one submarine was captured with its key sheets intact, the entire system was compromised for that period. The Kriegsmarine had procedures to prevent this. If a U-boat radioed that it was under attack and about to be captured, command would order an immediate key change. All submarines would switch to emergency settings. The captured keys would become useless. But the procedures depended on the crew following them perfectly. During a catastrophic emergency, while the boat was being depth charged, while water was flooding in, while men were dying, Poland had broken Enigma in 1932. Polish mathematicians, led by Marian Rejewski, reconstructed the internal wiring of the machine through analysis of intercepted messages. They built mechanical devices called bombas to test possible settings rapidly. They'd been reading German military communications for years before World War II began. In July 1939, with German invasion imminent, Poland shared everything with Britain and France: the rotor wirings, the braking techniques, the bomba designs, everything. Britain established the government code and cipher school at Bletchley Park in Buckinghamshire, a Victorian manor house with outbuildings that became known as huts. GC&CS recruited academics, mathematicians from Cambridge and Oxford, linguists, chess champions, people who thought in patterns and puzzles. Alan Turing arrived at Bletchley on September 4, 1939. The day after Britain declared war, he was assigned to Hut 8, responsible for German naval codes. Turing wasn't a professional codebreaker. He was a mathematician who'd written groundbreaking papers on computation and artificial intelligence, but he understood the fundamental problem of Enigma. The machine was too complex to break through pure mathematics, but it had weaknesses, predictable elements, patterns in how operators used it, ways to narrow the 150 quintillion possibilities down to something manageable. Turing developed a technique called banbarismus, a statistical method for determining the rotor order and initial positions. It worked by analyzing repeated segments in different messages, finding patterns that shouldn't exist if the encryption was truly random. The patterns indicated specific rotor configurations. Turing also designed an improved version of the Polish bomba. The British called it the bomba. It was an electromechanical device containing multiple sets of rotating drums that simulated Enigma rotors. Feed it a probable piece of plaintext and its corresponding ciphertext, and the bomba would test thousands of possible settings per hour, eliminating impossibilities until it found matches. The first bomba, named Victory, became operational at Bletchley in March 1940. It could test a complete set of rotor orders in about 20 hours. Not fast enough for operational intelligence, but fast enough to eventually break messages. Bletchley broke Army and Luftwaffe Enigma first. Those systems used 3 rotors and simpler procedures. By May 1940, British codebreakers were reading significant amounts of German Army traffic. This intelligence, codenamed Ultra, gave advance warning of German movements during the Battle of France. The information was accurate but came too late to save France from collapse. Naval Enigma was harder. 4 rotors instead of 3, more complex procedures, different key distribution, and the Kriegsmarine changed settings more frequently. Breaking it required captured material. The first breakthrough came in February 1941. A British destroyer captured documents from a German weather trawler. Weather ships used simplified Enigma settings that changed monthly instead of daily. The captured documents provided enough information for Turing to break into the system partially, but partial access wasn't enough. Bletchley could read some messages after significant delay, days or weeks. By then, the intelligence was worthless. U-boats had moved, convoys had sailed, attacks had succeeded or failed. Historical information had no tactical value. What Bletchley needed was a fully functioning naval Enigma machine with current key sheets, a pinch in intelligence terminology, stealing the enemy's encryption system along with the keys to operate it. British naval intelligence began planning pinch operations, boarding enemy vessels to seize cipher material. Dangerous, difficult, unlikely to succeed, but necessary. May 9, 1941, provided the opportunity, not through planning, but through the chaos of combat. Convoy OB-318 sailed from Liverpool on May 2, 1941. 38 merchant ships, bound for North America, carrying manufactured goods, mail, whatever Britain could spare. The return trip would bring food, fuel, ammunition, everything Britain needed to survive. The escort was designated 3rd Escort Group, 8 warships led by HMS Bulldog, a B-class destroyer, commanded by Commander Joe Baker Creswell. Also in the group, HMS Broadway, another destroyer, HMS Aubratia, a corvette, and 5 other escort vessels. The convoy's route took it northwest past Iceland into the Denmark Strait. Dangerous waters. U-boat patrol lines covered the approaches. The Kriegsmarine monitored convoy departures through agents in neutral ports and aerial reconnaissance. Once a convoy was located, U-boats would vector in for the kill. U-1110 and U-21 were patrolling south of Iceland, part of a larger group searching for eastbound convoys. Both were Type 9 submarines, larger than the common Type 7, with longer range and better provisions. U-1110 was relatively new, commissioned only 5 months earlier. Her commander was Kapitänleutnant Fritz Julius Lemp. Lemp was 28 years old, an experienced U-boat commander. He'd been commanding submarines since 1938. His first command was U-30, which he'd taken into the Atlantic on the first day of the war. On September 3, 1939, Lemp fired the first torpedo of World War II. His target was the passenger liner SS Athenia, sailing from Liverpool to Montreal with over 1,400 passengers. Lemp claimed he mistook her for an armed merchant cruiser. She was clearly a passenger liner. The attack killed 112 civilians, including 28 Americans. German propaganda blamed Britain for the sinking, said Churchill had ordered it to turn neutral opinion against Germany. The lie held until the Nuremberg trials, when Admiral Dönitz admitted the truth. Lemp had altered his log to remove the entry, sworn his crew to secrecy, buried the evidence. Hitler had feared the sinking would bring America into the war immediately. It didn't, but it marked Lemp as reckless, effective, but willing to violate orders. He'd sunk 17 Allied merchant ships, commanding U-30, damaged the battleship HMS Barham, earned the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross, In November 1940, Lemp took command of U-11. Newer boat, bigger, better range. He'd completed one patrol already, sunk 2 ships, damaged 2 others. Now, on his second patrol, he was hunting in convoy lanes south of Iceland. On May 7 and 8, U-1110 and U-201 located convoy OB-318. They shadowed it, radioed position reports to U-boat command, waited for darkness. On May 9, at 1,000 hours, Lemp attacked. He fired torpedoes at 2 merchant ships, Esmond and Bangor Head. Both torpedoes hit, both ships exploded, men died, survivors jumped into the icy Atlantic. The escorts responded immediately. HMS Aubratia, the corvette, had been sweeping ahead of the convoy. The explosions brought her racing back. She activated her Aztec, the British sonar system. The operator heard a strong contact, submarine, range 500 yards. Aubratia charged in and dropped depth charges, patterns of explosives set to detonate at different depths. The Atlantic erupted. Columns of water shot skyward. U-1110 survived the first attack, but took damage. Lemp dove deeper and tried to escape. HMS Broadway joined the hunt. More depth charges. Closer this time. U-1110's hull groaned. Leaks developed. Electrical systems flickered. The boat was taking a beating. HMS Bulldog arrived and took command. Baker Creswell coordinated the attack. 3 escort vessels dropping depth charges in coordinated patterns, keeping the submarine pinned, preventing escape. At 11:25 hours, U-1110 broke the surface, blown ballast, out of control. Lemp had lost depth control. The boat came up bow first, bursting through the surface like a breaching whale. HMS Broadway was only 300 yards away. The destroyer's captain shaped course to ram, then reconsidered. If he sank U-1110 immediately, they'd learn nothing. Instead, he fired 2 depth charges set to shallow depth, directly under the submarine. The explosions hammered U-1110 from below, but didn't sink her. The concussion was catastrophic inside the submarine. Systems failed. Water flooded in. Men were thrown against bulkheads. Lemp realized his boat was finished. He ordered abandoned ship. The crew scrambled topside. 47 men total. 15 were already dead from the depth charge explosions. The surviving 32 climbed onto the casing. Some jumped into the water immediately. Others waited. All were terrified. Ships were racing toward them. Guns were training on the submarine. Lemp's final order was, "Last stop, everybody out." The crew understood. Open the vents. Flood the ballast tanks. Set scuttling charges if possible. Destroy the Enigma machine and code books. Get off before she goes down. But chaos prevented proper procedures. The crew didn't have time to destroy the Enigma. They thought the scuttling charges had been set. They believed the boat would sink in minutes. Better to get off and survive than die trying to follow procedures. Lemp made it topside last, realized the crew was abandoning ship, ordered them into the water. Broadway and Bulldog were launching boats to rescue survivors. The Germans would be picked up, better captured than dead. But U-1110 wasn't sinking. She floated on the surface, bow high, stern low, clearly damaged but not flooding rapidly. The scuttling charges hadn't detonated. The vents weren't fully open. The submarine remained afloat. Baker Creswell, on Bulldog's bridge, saw the opportunity immediately. The U-boat was abandoned, intact, full of secrets. If they could board her before she sank, the intelligence coup would be enormous. He called for volunteers. Sub-Lieutenant David Baum stepped forward. Baum was 20 years old. He'd been at sea less than a year, but he was willing. Baker Creswell gave him simple orders. Take a party aboard, get whatever you can out of her. Documents, books, charts, wireless settings, anything. Bulldog launched a whaler, a small open boat, propelled by oars. Baum and 8 sailors rowed toward UNI. The submarine wallowed in the Atlantic swells. No movement visible. Could be a trap. Germans might be inside, waiting to repel boarders, or booby traps might be set to explode when the hatches were opened. Baum approached cautiously, called out, no response. He grabbed the conning tower ladder and climbed. The hatch was open. He shouted down, silence. He holstered his pistol and descended. 3 ladders. Each step took him deeper into the unknown. The control room was empty, water around his ankles, emergency lights flickering, the whole boat creaking. It felt like a trap, like the submarine could flood or explode at any moment. Baum checked for Germans. None. Checked for scuttling charges. None visible. The boat appeared genuinely abandoned. He signaled for the rest of his party to come aboard. For the next several hours, Baum and his men stripped U-11 systematically. They brought no specialized equipment, no cameras, no lists of what to look for, just orders to take everything that looked important. In the radio room, they found the Enigma machine. Wooden case, open on the table, rotors visible inside. The machine was still set to today's settings. The Germans hadn't had time to change them. William Pollock arrived on the second boat from Bulldog. He was a signalman, an experienced radio operator. He recognized the Enigma immediately. This was huge. This was what Bletchley Park needed. He handled it carefully, documented the rotor settings by hand, took the machine. Beside the Enigma sat the code books, current key sheets, settings for the entire month, instructions for special procedures. Everything needed to operate the system. Baum didn't know what half of it was. He just took it all. They found charts showing U-boat patrol areas, documents describing Wolfpack tactics, recognition books for Allied ships, operating manuals for the submarine's equipment, personal documents belonging to the crew, letters, diaries, photographs. Everything went into bags and boxes. Multiple trips to Bulldog, hours of work while U-11 floated precariously. The stern was settling lower. Water was gaining inside, but the submarine refused to sink quickly. Baker Cresswell decided to take U-11 in tow. If they could get her to Iceland or Scotland, the intelligence value would be incalculable. Engineers boarded to assess the damage. They determined she could be towed if the weather held. Bulldog attached a tow line. Broadway and Obredia rounded up the German survivors. 32 men pulled from the water. Cold, shocked, demoralized, they were taken below and locked in compartments, separated so they couldn't communicate, guarded constantly. Commander Lemp was not among the survivors. Multiple accounts exist of his death. The official German report, compiled after the war, claimed Lemp was shot in the water, either by the British boarding party or by sailors on Bulldog. The implication was murder, deliberately killing the commander to prevent him from scuttling his boat. Baum denied this categorically. He insisted no shots were fired by his party. Baker Cresswell confirmed. No one aboard Bulldog fired at Germans in the water. The British account stated that Lemp drowned. The most likely explanation is that Lemp realized, while in the water, that U-11 wasn't sinking. He saw the British boarding party climbing aboard. Understood what was happening. The Enigma, the code books, everything was being captured. He tried to swim back to board his own submarine, to destroy the cipher material or set the scuttling charges manually, but the Atlantic water was near freezing. Swimming in a Kapok life jacket is difficult. The distance was too far. He disappeared beneath the waves. Whether he intended to go down with the boat or simply couldn't make it back, Lemp died in the water. His body was never recovered. The U-boat war had claimed its 37th commander. The tow toward Iceland proceeded through May 9 and into May 10. U-11 wallowed behind Bulldog, taking on water slowly but still afloat. They'd covered nearly 100 miles. Iceland was within reach. Then, early on May 10, the weather worsened. The tow cable snapped. U-11 finally flooded her remaining compartments. She sank stern first, taking the last secrets with her. The hull and torpedoes and diesel engines went down, but everything important was already aboard Bulldog. Baker Cresswell immediately imposed absolute secrecy. Every man involved in the boarding was sworn to silence. The German prisoners were told nothing. They assumed their submarine had sunk immediately after they abandoned her. They had no idea it had been boarded and stripped. Bulldog proceeded to Iceland. The German prisoners were transferred immediately to a secure POW facility. No contact with other prisoners, no letters home. Their mail was monitored by cryptanalysts to ensure they didn't hint at what happened. The Enigma machine and documents were flown from Iceland to Scapa in Scotland. From there, driven under heavy guard to Bletchley Park, The entire operation was classified beyond top secret. Even the Americans weren't told until January 1942, 8 months later, when Churchill finally informed President Roosevelt. The captured material reached Bletchley on May 13. Analysts in Hut 8 examined it immediately. The Enigma rotors were set to May 9 settings. The code books contained keys through the end of June. They had 7 weeks of valid cipher keys. But more importantly, they had a complete, functioning naval Enigma. They could study how it worked, understand the special procedures, discover quirks and weaknesses that couldn't be determined from intercepted messages alone. Turing and his team began breaking messages immediately. Within days, they were reading significant portions of U-boat traffic. Within weeks, they'd refined their techniques to break messages within hours of interception. The Kriegsmarine's communications had become an open book. The impact was immediate and dramatic. In June 1941, Allied merchant ship losses in the Atlantic totaled 432,000 tons. 61 ships sunk. The U-boat wolf packs were devastating. Dönitz's coordination from Kurneval allowed multiple submarines to concentrate on convoys, overwhelming the escorts, sinking ships faster than Britain could replace them. By August 1941, losses had dropped to 80,000 tons, fewer than 20 ships. The U-boats were still attacking, but convoys were evading them. Submarines were arriving at patrol positions to find empty ocean. The targets had been routed around them. The explanation was simple. Bletchley Park was reading the German traffic. Every U-boat position report was intercepted and decrypted. Every patrol line assignment was known within hours. Every Wolfpack coordination message was read before the submarines received it. The Admiralty's Operational Intelligence Center plotted U-boat positions on maps, calculated patrol areas, routed convoys through the gaps. The Germans noticed the decline in sinkings, but attributed it to other factors: better Allied radar, more escort vessels, improved tactics, long-range aircraft covering more of the Atlantic. All of these were true, but they weren't the primary reason. The primary reason was that convoys knew where the U-boats were and avoided them. Dönitz suspected the British might be breaking Enigma. He ordered investigations. German cryptographers examined the system mathematically, tested possible methods of attack, concluded that breaking Enigma remained impossible. The number of combinations was simply too large. Any success the British had must be due to direction finding on radio transmissions or other technical means. The investigators never considered the possibility that the British had captured an intact machine with code books. The Kriegsmarine's records showed no submarines captured intact. U-1110 was listed as sunk, with all hands, fate unknown. Lemp was officially missing, presumed dead. No special circumstances noted. The Germans continued using Enigma throughout 19. Traffic volume remained high. Dönitz micromanaged operations as before. Nothing changed. But in February 1942, the Kriegsmarine introduced a new wrinkle, Enigma M4, a 4-rotor naval Enigma with a modified 4th rotor. The old 3-rotor machines couldn't decrypt M4 traffic. The new rotor combinations multiplied the key space even further. Bletchley Park went dark. Ultra intelligence from U-boat traffic stopped. The code breakers couldn't read M4 messages. They had the machine from U-1110, but it only had 3 rotor slots. The 4th rotor required different internal wiring, different procedures, different mathematics. The blackout lasted 9 months, from February through October 1942. During that period, Allied shipping losses skyrocketed again. June 1942 saw 700,000 tons sunk. The U-boats were winning again. Then, on October 30, 1942, another opportunity arrived. HMS Petard depth-charged U-559 in the Mediterranean. The submarine surfaced. The crew abandoned ship. 2 British sailors, Lieutenant Anthony Fasson and able seaman Colin Grazier, boarded before she sank. They went down into the flooding submarine, retrieved codebooks, passed them up through the hatch to a 3rd sailor. Then U-559 flooded completely and sank, taking Fasson and Grazier with her. The captured codebooks from U-559 provided the keys to M4. Not an Enigma machine this time, but enough documentation to reconstruct how it worked. By December 1942, Bletchley was breaking M4 traffic. Ultra-intelligence resumed. Convoy routing improved. Losses dropped again. May 1943 marked the turning point of the Battle of the Atlantic. German U-boat losses exceeded replacement rates. 43 submarines sunk in 1 month, twice the number Germany could build. The Kriegsmarine lost experienced crews faster than they could train new ones. On May 24, 1943, Dönitz ordered all U-boats out of the North Atlantic. The wolf packs withdrew. The 45-month campaign had failed. Britain's supply lines were secure. America could build up forces for the invasion of Europe. The Enigma breakthrough from U-1110 didn't win the Battle of the Atlantic alone. Many factors contributed: improved radar, long-range B-24 Liberator aircraft closing the mid-Atlantic air gap, more escort carriers, better training for escort crews, American entry into the war adding shipbuilding capacity and escorts. But ultra-intelligence was crucial. General Dwight Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of Allied forces in Europe, told MI6 in July 1945 that Ultra saved thousands of British and American lives and in no small way contributed to the speed with which the enemy was routed and eventually agreed to surrender. Historians estimate that breaking Enigma shortened the war by 2 to 4 years. Every convoy routed around a wolf pack saved ships and crews. Every U-boat sunk based on decrypted positions prevented future attacks. The cumulative effect was decisive. King George VI personally told Baker Creswell that capturing U-1110 cipher material was the most important single event in the whole war at sea. The king understood what most people couldn't be told. The secret had to remain absolute. If Germany knew Enigma was compromised, they'd change systems immediately. All the advantage would be lost. The secrecy held through the end of the war. German commanders at Nuremberg had no idea the Allies had been reading their mail for years. They attributed their losses to technical superiority and material advantage, never to intelligence. The truth began emerging in the 1970s, when the British government started declassifying Bletchley Park documents. The full story took decades to reveal. Even then, many veterans who'd worked at Bletchley or participated in pinch operations had died without ever telling their families what they'd done. David Baum returned to civilian life after the war. He never spoke about boarding U-11. He believed the secret would remain forever. Not until 1991, when films about Enigma began production, did his family learn what he'd accomplished. Baum received no recognition until the secrecy relaxed. In later years, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, presented with a Bletchley Park badge, given a certificate signed by Prime Minister David Cameron. But for 50 years, he'd been just another naval officer who'd served on a destroyer. In 2000, Hollywood released U-571, a film about capturing an Enigma machine. The film claimed American sailors captured a U-boat in complete fiction. The capture was British in 1941 by HMS Bulldog. The film sparked outrage in Britain. Parliament introduced a motion condemning the historical distortion. The screenwriter later admitted the change was a mercenary decision to drive the film for an American audience. He regretted altering the historical facts, but the damage was done. Millions who saw U-571 believed Americans had captured Enigma. The British achievement was overshadowed by Hollywood myth. The real story was more remarkable. A 20-year-old sub-lieutenant climbed down into an abandoned enemy submarine, didn't know what he was looking for, took everything that seemed important. One of those items changed the course of the war. Alan Turing and the codebreakers at Bletchley Park had the genius to exploit the captured material, but without the capture, they'd have remained partially blind. The naval Enigma would have stayed unreadable. Convoys would have sailed into wolf packs. Britain might have starved. The Germans never learned the lesson. They continued believing Enigma was mathematically unbreakable. They investigated other possibilities, but never seriously considered that the machine itself had been captured. Their confidence in mathematics blinded them to the human factor. Submarines could be captured, codebooks could be taken, secrets could be lost in seconds of chaos during combat. Admiral Dönitz went to his grave believing the Kriegsmarine had lost the Battle of the Atlantic due to Allied technological superiority, better radar, more ships, more aircraft. He never fully understood that every message he sent coordinating Wolfpack operations was being read by the enemy within hours. U-11. U-11's a bottom of the Atlantic. Her exact position is known. She sits in 3,000 feet of water, south of Iceland, where she sank on May 10th. The hull is deteriorating. The secrets she held are long since revealed, but the Enigma machine from her radio room sits in a museum at Bletchley Park. Visitors can see the device that encrypted German naval communications. The rotors David Baum carried out of U-11. The machine the Kriegsmarine believed was unbreakable. It was unbreakable, mathematically. Given infinite time and computing power, the combinations could theoretically be tested, but practically, it was secure, until a 20-year-old British officer climbed down into darkness and took it. May 9, 1941. One submarine, one boarding party, one captured machine. The Kriegsmarine never realized what they'd lost. Fritz Julius Lemp drowned trying to protect his boat's secrets. David Baum climbed down 3 ladders into an abandoned U-boat, terrified but determined. Alan Turing and his team turned captured hardware into operational intelligence, and the Battle of the Atlantic shifted from German advantage to Allied dominance. The Germans kept using Enigma because they believed in mathematics. The British broke Enigma because they understood humans. Submarines could be captured, procedures could fail, chaos created opportunities. King George VI called it the most important single event in the war at sea. He was right. Without U-11's Enigma and codebooks, Bletchley Park would have remained partially blind, convoys would have died, Britain would have starved, the invasion of Europe would have been delayed or impossible. German command was blindsided because they never imagined their unbreakable cipher could be stolen intact. They investigated other possibilities, but never the simplest one. Someone took the machine. David Baum died in 2016 at age 95, finally recognized for what he'd done. The Enigma from U-11 remains at Bletchley Park, and the lesson endures. The strongest security fails when humans panic, when procedures break down, when 20-year-olds climb into danger and take everything that looks important. If you found this story of capture, code breaking, and consequences compelling, please like this video, subscribe to WWII Tales to stay connected with history that matters. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and whether you'd have had the courage to board an enemy submarine. Thank you for watching and for remembering.